You're listening to the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast, where we talk about hunting, politics, sports, and everything in between. Now, here's your host, Steve West.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. And wouldn't you know, on the very first podcast, the day we go to record it, we get hit with a massive blizzard. We're running a little bit behind schedule here. And, you know, there's nothing quite like throwing a little extra pressure on that day. You know, you feel like you've got to do something right. And, you know, it just seemed like, man, let's stack up a foot of snow overnight and see how much work we can make somebody do before they get started. You know, these things come together slowly sometimes. This podcast's been a long time in coming, and I'm really excited to get it started. And there's no better people than Travis Price, who's sitting across from me today, and our special guest that I would rather do my first podcast ever with. We're joined by John Sullivan from his home in Greenwich, Connecticut. John is an 11-year veteran of the NFL. He was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, played there for like ever. Then went to the Washington Redskins, now known as the football team, and then finished his career with the LA Rams, playing probably the biggest game of all time. The Super Bowl is his final NFL game. John, how are you doing?
I'm great, Steve. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh man, like I said, couldn't have better guys on the show with me here today to kick this podcast off. You know, everything's great here minus that blizzard. So, I'm looking out the window behind you on the screen, and it's interesting to see. I think I just saw birds fly by. I mean, you guys are balmy.
No, we've had some snow recently. We've still got snow on the ground. It's actually been a pretty cold winter here. It's just, you know, where we are, there's nothing to be taken advantage of with having snow. It's not like you're going to track lions here. You know, so at least you guys can look forward to some hunting based on those snow conditions out there.
Yeah. If we could get a little bit of snow in northwest Colorado, Utah, and some of those states where we can run the dogs, we're definitely planning on getting out at least one or two times. We're all on call on this end, so hopefully something breaks free. You know, you and Travis have something in common. Travis played professional softball, Team USA. You played, professional football.
Mm-hmm.
Travis, how long were you with Team USA?
Actually, for 10 seasons.
10 seasons. Wow.
2004 through 2013.
Man, that's forever.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up a little bit later here in the podcast, but I see professional sports and that performance on the field being a big part of, all of a sudden having to turn in a performance on camera. So, like I said, we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But, John, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your NFL career, kind of what, transpired, over the course of, more than a decade in professional football. I mean, you went to Greenwich High School, right? I mean, you got to play in state championship games. You're highly recruited. You get, a full ride scholarship to Notre Dame. You were there for like 5 years, weren't you?
Yeah. So I graduated after 4 and then played my last season there as what they termed a non-degree seeking graduate student. So they weren't going to give me a graduate degree in anything. They were like, look, you didn't do well enough to actually be admitted, but they do, Notre Dame does actually hold you accountable, and they care about the academics. So they're not just giving out degrees for free, like a lot of those schools. So, I was there for 5 years. But look, I mean, the NFL was incredible. Like you said, it was 11 years, but the journey to that game in Super Bowl 53, which I guess is the culmination of the whole thing, is a lot longer than 11 seasons. It's 11 years in the NFL, 5 years at Notre Dame, 4 years at Greenwich High School. I don't know how many years I played before that. Do the math, right? I started in 4th grade. I actually couldn't play as an 8th grader. That disrupted my potential career. We had a league weight limit at what was called the Greenwich Youth Football League, the GYFL. And I had to diet in 7th grade to make the weight limit just to be a lineman in the GYFL. So, and that weight limit, I believe, was 160 pounds. So when I got to 8th grade on the first day of school, I was 270 pounds. And it just wasn't feasible to think
we've lost you, John. Let's see.
Play football. So
we're losing John here. We've got some technical difficulties here. It could have something to do with this blizzard that's hitting us outside.
Got me back?
Yeah, let me Yeah, I could hear you there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, where'd you lose me?
You were just starting to talk about weighing 270 pounds in a league with a 160-pound limit. I mean, you were a big kid,
I was a little too big to play football. Yeah, they thought it was a safety issue. So I had a little disruption there in that 8th grade year, but then fortunately I went right back to football when I got to high school, although it wasn't an easy choice. I grew up playing water polo as well. And water polo and football coincide. They're both fall sports in the state of Connecticut. So I had to choose football over water polo, but I was big enough. I enjoyed the sport, and I could see, potential trajectory for, at least the ability to use it to get into a good school and, play college football. But after I made that choice to play and then got on a good path, I came, through a great high school program. They're really what sets you up for long-term success in the sport. I saw the opportunity that I was maybe 14 or 15 years old when I first thought, okay, if I work hard enough at this, I could be a professional. And I got on that path right away. I never looked back.
Yeah. I mean, I watched so many of your old high school football games when I captured all of your mom's old tapes. By the way, your mom definitely gets Fan of the Year award. I heard her yell some pretty crazy things from behind the camera.
If her kids are competing, there's no doubt about it. She's a full-on mama bear.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I look forward to meeting her one of these days. For anybody that doesn't know, John Sullivan's actually also one of our business partners here at Steve's Outdoor Adventures. And we've been able to go in the field together on a few occasions. And he's been featured in a number of our television shows over the last 2 seasons. And one of the things we did when he realized that we had really good video capabilities was he sent me this massive box of little HDV tapes and DV tapes and some stuff that was really old, that was like 8 millimeter, that was 20 years old. I mean, it was incredible, all these tapes that I got to look at. And, I'm watching all these old games as they're being captured. And I was laughing because you looked like a man out there running around with little kids once in a while. And then when I looked at your football games in high school, and I was like, oh my God, it's no wonder you stood out to all of these Division I colleges, because you looked like a 35-year-old man out there running around with 17-year-old boys.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, and I understand, like, not to make a broader point, but about all the sports specialization that goes on. But like, I didn't have parents that were athletes and knew anything about athletics. They exposed 4 boys. They exposed a lot of different sports. We were all Americans in 5 different sports in high school. I was 2, and then the other, 1 sport each. And, I'm not, give your kids the resources if you have the proper training, but, also don't deprive them of playing a lot of sports. If they really have a future and they have a passion for it, they'll find their way through. It doesn't require, at least in football, maybe there are some sports where you have to be specialized at a young age, whether that's tennis or golf or those really specialized individual sports. But in terms of team sports, I think there's a tremendous amount of value in doing it all.
Fantastic. Yeah, great advice. Let me ask you this, one little tidbit. What was it like to get drafted, like draft night, right? I mean, you went, in the 6th round, right?
Yeah, brutal. It was horrible.
Yeah, but you got picked like a few picks ahead of where Tom Brady had actually gotten picked, right? Like Brady was 199. Where were you drafted?
I was 187.
So you were actually more highly thought of than Tom Brady.
I don't know if that did equate.
And John, was that in the same year in 2000? What year did you get?
No. I wasn't drafted. I was still at Greenwich High School in 2000. I wasn't drafted until 2008.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Tom's a lot older than I am.
Oh, Tom's old as hell, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The most impressive guy.
We just watched, witnessed him accomplish something absolutely crazy. And, for me, the big takeaway is that when someone like Tom Brady gets selected 199th overall in the 2000 draft, and when you hear the coaches talking about it, they kind of overlook some of the intangibles. They were kind of looking at the biggest, the fastest, and the strongest, and there was a lot of things that you can't measure with Tom Brady that, he still uses today to be a champion. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on that. And for you specifically, John, what are some of the intangibles that have made you successful in your career that aren't necessarily measurable? because they have parallels to not only
Yeah.
hunting, but also to business and to relationships, all kind of things.
Well, you make a great point about all that stuff. I mean, look, you do your best in terms of the NFL scouting departments. They do their best to quantify all these things, but ultimately, you can only tell so much until you actually have somebody on your team. You have them in the building. You get to spend time around them. You see how they perform as an individual, but it's very hard to ascertain off watching tape how they affect the people that.
We're running into some more technical difficulties here. Tell you what, this is actually an ideal time for us to take a quick break. We need to hear from our sponsors that help make this podcast possible, and we'll work on this technical difficulty, and I want to hear more on this subject when we come right back, once again, from this short commercial break.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Bergara Rifles, where the people truly make the difference.
All right, we're back here at Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. Once again, I'm joined by Travis Price from our office and, of course, our friend and business partner, John Sullivan. We're talking about NFL, and we had a little audio difficulty there, and there was a dropout. And I really wanted to hear you talk about the question Travis asked you, which was, what are those intangibles that make, a guy like Tom Brady look so poor? I mean, we've all seen his NFL combine video of him running the 40 or any of those athletic skills drills, and he didn't look that impressive, and all of a sudden he's on he just won his 7th Super Bowl. Yep. So talk about that. We froze up again. John, hold on a second. Yeah, you froze up again there. We lost you. Can you start over there?
I'm wondering if I can get onto something hardwired here. Maybe that would help.
I think it's here though.
Yeah, it could be our end because we're locked down in a blizzard. So, if you're not losing me, you're probably good. My thought is that it's probably my connection due to the blizzard outside, and so
I got you.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, just go for it. You sound good right now.
Yeah, so I mean, Tom Brady's definitely not the body type. I mean, we've all seen that video of him at the combine running the 40. They make you get up there. It's like an underwear parade. They get everybody. They look them over. They measure your body fat, make you stand up, more than half naked in front of all these scouts, and they're judging you and making assessments as if they can really tell anything. And then you do the on-field work, you bench press, run routes, throw the ball for the lineman, you do, offensive line focus drills, and you give them all these measurables, but there's all these other things that you just can't measure, right? There's no test for, how they do a Wonderlic, right? They try to do an aptitude test, but in terms of how somebody really, processes information when they're actually playing and when the pressure's on, how somebody communicates, how somebody affects the people around them, either through their confidence or their knowledge of what everybody's supposed to be doing within the system. Those are all really, really difficult things to quantify. So, teams try to do it, but it's an imperfect science. And that's why you see a guy like Tom Brady, who's clearly the best football player of all time, arguably the greatest athlete of all time. I would think clearly the greatest team sport athlete of all time. That's why you see him, drafted 199th overall. And obviously every single one of those teams, that didn't draft him would go back and take him if they could. Although, he also went to a great situation with Bill Belichick. And not to say that obviously he can get it done having left, but if Tom had been with somebody else as a rookie, as opposed to now in his, 25th season or whatever he's in, maybe it would have been a different trajectory for him. So it's not all Tom either.
Was Belichick the head coach when he won his first Super Bowl, when Bledsoe was the starting quarterback that he replaced? Or was that Parcells? Oh, poor connection. This video will resume. Yeah. I lost you again, John. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. I heard you there.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that Parcells?
No, it was Belichick.
It was. Okay. All right. I just remember there was a transition there, and I couldn't remember which one was the coach, but you're right. He went to a great organization at the great time. He got a chance to start his career behind an incredible quarterback like Drew Bledsoe, where he didn't have to come in game one of the season. He got to learn a little bit. But I mean, what a story, the intangibles of that guy are incredible. All right. So
it's also, I mean, the story's not over. He's clearly going to be back. He's going to go for another one. Can't help himself,
And then
admirable.
John, real quick, what would you say your, highest intangible is as an athlete, yours personally? Because you've obviously had an awesome career as well. I just would like to know what yours is.
I had certain, physical skills that made me, capable. I didn't have any detriment that totally kept me out of the NFL, right? So I wasn't overwhelmingly powerful. I was pretty quick. I had good size, not great size. I was not the same way as Tom was for his position. I wasn't the type of guy that really scouts to, fawn over me at the combine. But what I had a very good understanding of kind of the process of the game. And then I communicated really well. So I could influence how the guys that were around me were playing. And especially as I got older, it wasn't just the offensive line. It wasn't just the offensive line. It was the quarterback. And then it became kind of the offense in general. So especially when I was in LA, I had a very close relationship with Sean McVay, and I had a lot of influence in terms of how things actually went on the field when we were trying to execute the game plan that he would put together along with the offensive coaching staff.
Got it. And you were in the right position to be able to communicate that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really only the center or the quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost John again there.
Fuck.
Yeah.
You hear the...
Yeah, that one came through pretty cleanly there, John.
I just got us every...
Yeah. Well, we only got one F-bomb out of you anyway. But, hopefully that comes through cleanly. But, yeah, I could tell watching that last season of football where you were in L.A., you could tell who the guy on the field was that was the field general, who was directing traffic. And I had a feeling it was coming from 6'5" in the middle.
Yeah, look, and that's not to say there aren't other on-field leaders. I mean, the quarterback has to manage a lot of those relationships. Andrew Whitworth was great. There was a lot of veteran experience coming from him. But, and he would notice things about the defense. We both had a similar habit where people couldn't understand doing this. We were in the huddle. We would actually face the defense because they'll communicate. So you'll see two guys talking and you'll know that they're going to, run a stunt with each other. So there's information that you can gain at all times. The plays are only active between the whistles, but there's a game within the game, and he understood that. So he was a massive influence as well. But in terms of by position, in order to see the entire field, so to have a complete picture and then be able to communicate to everybody, you've really got to be quarterback ideally, or if you have a younger quarterback and a veteran center, you got to be at that center spot.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this. What was it like? I mean, you got drafted into a good situation, I felt like in Minnesota. I mean, tell me, who was your first NFL quarterback that you snapped a football to?
The first guy I ever snapped a ball to was Gus Perrott.
And then he was replaced by?
Well, I was the backup. I came into a backup situation. So Gus was the second string quarterback in Minnesota, and Tavares Jackson, who actually passed away within the last year in a car accident. Tavares Jackson was the starting quarterback. So I was snapping to Gus when training camp or mini camp started, and Matt Burke was the starting center, who was a very intelligent guy, Harvard player, 5 or 6 time Pro Bowler. It seemed like an every year All-Pro from St. Paul, right? So he was the perfect kind of Minnesota kid.
Yeah, the hometown boy. Yeah.
Vikings. And then fortunately for me, he got into after my first season there, he got into a bit of a contract dispute and played a little bit of chicken with the Vikings, and they felt like they could roll with me. And, he moved on to Baltimore, and I got an opportunity to start. And look, it turned out well for Matt. He ended up finishing his career with a Super Bowl. So, I think it worked out for all parties.
Yeah. Wasn't there more to that story? Didn't it work out really good for you, like for the long term too, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, you know, you're a 6th round pick, right? There's no guarantee you're going to make the team, and there's not a whole lot of guaranteed money at that spot. You know, my signing bonus when I signed was not 6 figures. So, you know, I'm not scoffing at what I was given. It's still serious money, but it's not these, you know, it wasn't some big multi-million-dollar signing bonus. You know, I had to earn my way onto that team, and I did. And then you have to earn the trust of the coaches to become a starter, and I did that. And then in order to earn that second contract, you got to play, and you got to play at a high level. And fortunately for me, I played 09. That was the year that Brett Favre came. That went pretty well. 2010, I played most of the year, played very well. And then 2011, I had a bit of a career resurgence and played well and got extended. So, yeah, if I had that shot in 2009, it could have turned out totally different.
Gotcha. When we come back from this short commercial break, John, I want to ask you what it was like to play with Brett Favre and how you got into hunting. I know there's some stories there to be told and heard, and I look forward to hearing those stories. Once again, we got to take a quick break. We got to hear from the commercial sponsors that make this show possible, and it'll only be just a minute. We'll be right back.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Pendleton Ammunition. Hand-loaded, 1 round at a time.
All right, we're back from that short commercial break. Back here at Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. I've got Travis Price across from me, and of course, the infamous NFL center, John Sullivan, on the phone with us. John, we were just talking about, NFL, and yeah, it's starting to sound like a little bit like we're doing an ESPN show here, but it's about time we started talking about our real passion in life, right? I mean, it's why we're all here doing the things that we love to do in the field, and that is, hunting, fishing, and the great outdoors. How did you get into hunting?
So I moved to Minnesota. I didn't grow up in a family that hunted. We didn't shoot. There were no guns in the house. But when I got to Minnesota, I decided I needed to embrace being in the Midwest and do something in the off season that was kind of Minnesotan. So Minnesota has some amazing clays courses. So I went down to a place called the Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club, which is in Prior Lake, Minnesota. Bought a Beretta S686E. It was my first shotgun that they had in the shop on consignment, and then started shooting clays. Met some guys, some older shooters that were all machinists at Toro. They taught me how to shoot. Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club has a big league, like a 400 or 500 person league every spring, summer, fall. So I wasn't able to shoot the fall league, but I shot spring and summer. And then from shooting clays and getting into competing in that, I got into hunting, upland birds, and then did some waterfowl. And then around 2014, I got invited to Texas to hunt whitetail. And as soon as I shot my first big game, it was over for me. I was hooked.
Right on. Now, I think it was the 2009 season when Brett Favre joined the Minnesota Vikings, and Brett's a hunter too, isn't he? I mean, doesn't he get out in the outdoors a little bit? Did he influence you at all?
He didn't have I wouldn't say he had a ton of influence. I mean, we talked about it, but by that time, he had been in Green Bay a long time, so he'd been hunting whitetails with a bow in Wisconsin, and he was still doing that a little bit. But by 2009, when we talked, and I can't say this for sure, but what he told me was that he didn't really enjoy shooting deer anymore. He would really go out in the woods and sit in a tree stand just to, find some peace and look at the animals. So I think he enjoyed tracking deer. He wanted to see big bucks. He wanted to pattern them. I think he was running trail cams and doing all that stuff, but he wasn't really shooting deer anymore at that point. Now, I don't know if that's changed subsequently, but this was just a guy that loved, being out in nature, not necessarily having to, complete the task by actually killing an animal.
Well, I mean, once you've hunted long enough and you've been successful at it enough times, I mean, I guess I can relate to what Brett might have been talking about there, because there's been a number of times where it felt very anticlimactic for me to pull the trigger and put an animal down,
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I've also maybe had the privilege of being on the finishing end more times than most.
Yeah, I think you just, Steve, maybe than anybody on earth.
I got a long ways to go to catch up with a few guys out there, but I've definitely been more fortunate than most. So,
So John, what kind of hooked you kind of bone hooked you, so to speak, on hunting? Because you kind of said you didn't grow up in a family that hunted, and, but once you kind of did it and it got into your blood. But what was that kind of one thing, if you look back, that kind of hooked you?
I don't know if there's any one moment. Like, that's, for me, hunting is all about the experience. So, I mean, number one, I grew up as a massive animal lover. I've always loved animals. I loved having pets. We had dogs and guinea pigs, and there were always animals around.
We lost him again there. These technical difficulties are going to drive me crazy. Oh, and there goes wait a minute, is he back?
Am I back?
Now you're back.
Yeah, we lost after guinea pigs.
Yeah.
We lost you after guinea pigs.
Yeah, something about you hunted guinea pigs?
No, we had them as pets, and we supplied them to the local elementary school for all the classrooms because they bred like crazy. But now we're getting into some weird topics. But, I'm an animal lover, and then as I got older, I realized I felt the desire to kind of play a part in the whole process and take part in nature and not just be an observer. And it felt like getting out into the field was the way to do that. I enjoyed shooting. As soon as I started shooting competitively, I really enjoyed shooting. I always liked firearms. I wanted to own guns. We just didn't own them. And then, having spent a lot of time in a locker room, you get into the right hunting camp, and you spend time around the guys, the camp cooks, the camp staff, the other hunters, the guides. It's, for the people that haven't done it, it's an experience like no other. And when you add all of those things together, it's just, it becomes a passion. And I'm passionate about hunting. I wouldn't say I'm passionate about killing. I think there's a moment anytime you kill an animal, where you're joyous to a certain extent because that's the goal while you're out there in the field. But there's also a moment of sadness. You love that animal.
Yeah.
Respect for it.
Yeah, total respect was the word I was looking for. We've lost John again there. One of the questions I wanted to ask both of you guys, Travis, I mean, obviously, you'd stepped up on a mound to throw a pitch in front of a crowd, right? You've been on ESPN. I've watched the game. John, going out in front of a stadium full of, people. But what was it like the first time we threw a video camera on you guys and said, "Don't miss"? What for you, John? What was that like filming that first hunt? I mean, because it was the grizzly hunt, as I recall. We went to Alaska and we went on the grizzly hunt. What was it like to have video camera following us around?
It definitely changes things. I mean, obviously you're hunting in a certain way. With the camera, there are certain requirements for the hunt being filmed and being on television. But for me, it didn't change much. Look, I'm used to doing what I do professionally in the public eye. So I didn't feel any added pressure. In fact, it was nice to have a camera around and not have to be wearing pads.
Yeah.
And worry about getting run over by a tackle. It wouldn't have been much different by a grizzly than it was when I played the Eagles and Fletcher Cox used to just kick my ass. So
I was going to call and see if he wanted to be a videographer in his next career. Maybe offer him a job.
Look, I have a good chance of taking a bear in a fist fight.
I mean, you dropped off a few times there, but you pretty much insinuated that Fletcher Cox is a badass.
Yeah, he's pretty badass.
Yeah.
He's badass. Yeah. I just had nothing to offer in terms of blocking him at the end of my career. Just nothing.
That's right.
I wanted to block him, but
you still have a better chance of blocking him than Whit has of taking on a 200-pound black bear.
Yeah, we got into that stupid argument. I told you about that when Whit beat up a black bear. And I was like,
not happening. Yeah.
And, for me, it's hunting on camera is much different than hunting in person off camera. And I found myself, trying to think about what to say to the audience or on camera rather than just being myself. And it took me a few, trips or episodes to get through that. And then specifically, on my first hunt that I did through Steve's Outdoor Adventures, it was a Northwest Colorado mule deer hunt. And just before I was going to squeeze off, I found myself kind of the doubt creeping into my head that, if I miss, there could be thousands of people watching me, mess up or screw this up. And, since then I've just really had to learn just to be yourself, do it, and don't let those, potential self-doubts come in, because it's not a good place to be. And it's just, you're just out there being yourself and let the cards fall where they may.
What was your favorite hunt so far, Travis? Which your most favorite trip so far? What was your favorite hunt?
I really enjoyed the mountain goat portion of that Western BC moose goat combo.
Yeah.
That was they're all special in their own rights, but that specifically, just from a physical and a mental, overcoming those challenges was pretty special.
How about you, John? Which hunt that you've done so far with us and filmed, which episode was your favorite?
I would say of the episodes that I've filmed, my favorite hunt was the Desert Bighorn sheep down on the Baja.
Oh, yeah.
Just because the way they set up, the amount of spotters that we had, interacting with those guys, and just getting that true, authentic experience. I mean, we flew into Cabo. We're supposed to drive directly to La Paz. One of the guys who owned the operation owned a restaurant in Todos Santos. And I mean, Ray can talk about this too. Not that he's on the podcast right now, but I mean, we went to Todos Santos, ate at this guy's family restaurant. His wife cooked the meal, and then drove to La Paz, and then went into camp and just had an awesome time. And the stalk to get that ram was epic. I mean, the episode isn't long enough to really, it does a good job of capturing it, but it can't possibly capture just how physically grueling that was. And the moment of pure elation when, like Travis said, there's pressure to make that shot, especially after a really tough climb. But to have fired that shot, see the ram hit the dirt, and know that you
Yeah, you got your first sheep. It's funny that you guys both chose hunts that
were physically
physically demanding and physically challenging, to come from two professional athletes to pick that, because all of my favorite hunts of all time have all been the most physically demanding, grueling, the hunts that left me without, toenails or, blistered feet and miscellaneous other injuries. Those are the ones that I'll remember forever.
What's yours? What's the hardest? Because look, I've watched you post hole for a mile in Alaska before, and I thought you were going to die. I mean, what's the most grueling? I'm not asking what's the most dangerous hunt you've been on.
Sure.
What's the most grueling, physically demanding hunt you've been on in all your years, whether on TV or not?
It was one we did not that many years ago. We did a stone sheep hunt in the Cassiar Mountains, and that hunt, yeah. That was the Adventure Series hunt, and I had a good crew with me. I had Ian and Sam Soholt was there filming that week, and we put it on. It would have been like the equivalent of post holing for 2 weeks, in snow. It was miserable in an area with not very good stone sheep hunting, but it is most memorable from a physically demanding standpoint. And I believe the stone sheep's the most physically demanding of them all to get, just because of the part of the world that they live in. And tell you what, now we're down to telling stories. We've got to take one more break here. We got to hear from a sponsor of the show, and then when we come back, John, I'm going to have you tell me an NFL story, Travis tell me a softball story, and then you guys can ask me for a hunting story. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be right back.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Burris Optics. Find what matters.
All right, we're back from that short break with the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. Got Travis Price and, of course, the infamous John Sullivan. And, we were just telling a few hunting stories there at the end of the last segment. And, that brings me to one of my favorite segments I want to have in every week's show. It's you tell me a story, I'll tell you one. And I'm going to start with Travis. Travis, I want you to tell me, here's just a story. You tell me a story about your softball days, and I'll tell you a story. You can ask me any question you want to about hunting, okay? Yep. And I'll tell you a hunting story back. What was the toughest moment for you ever on the mountain? Because you pitched for Team USA. What was your toughest moment ever as a professional ball player?
I would probably say the toughest moment as a ball player was when I was, pitching for Team USA, and you know, you have to keep in mind that, you know, I was playing a sport in men's fast pitch softball that, you know, it's not like John in the NFL. It's just not. You know, it's primarily a female sport. And we finally got the opportunity to, you know, play what was called the World Championships or the World Cup at that time. And it was going to be aired on ESPN2, if I believe. And we were going to play Japan at the time, and I got the nod to start. And so, you know, as I look at the importance of this, not only is it important for our sport, it's important you're representing your country. You know, there's a lot riding on this game, right? And I get the nod, and I'm warming up, and I can feel the tension kind of building. There's a lot of people in the stands, you know, not in relation to the NFL, but there's probably 10,000 people there watching. You know, it's no joke. And, you know, we're going through the game, and it's pretty tight. And the Japanese, for fast pitch softball, are very disciplined, right? They don't make any mistakes. They're very quick. They're coached very well, highly disciplined. And so if you make a mistake, they're going to capitalize on it. And I remember it was about the 4th or 5th inning, and I go back out there, and it's pretty tight. It's like a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game, something like that. And I walk the first leadoff guy, and next guy hits a single. And there's this guy that comes up, and he's wearing double pink wristbands. And he's batting 4th. And, of course, I mistakenly threw a mistake, and he launches it over the fence.
Oh, you got roped.
Got roped with double pink wristbands. And on TV, on ESPN, the one chance we get. And so, you know, we all have these success stories and times in our careers that don't go very well. And that's one that just stuck with me. If I could rewind time and go through that again, I would have threw a different pitch. And even hit him just to put him on, just so that we don't get in that situation. But
give him some Roger Clemens chin music, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I took that pretty serious because there was a lot riding on that game, and that, you know, that sport and my team and representing the country meant a lot. And you know, unfortunately, I didn't come through in my role at that point, but I did have a great career and would never take it back.
Cool. All right, so you get to ask me a hunting story.
Okay, so very similar to kind of John's question, but not necessarily the most physical but what's your kind of most prized possession in terms of a trophy on all the hunts that you've done? Because you've obviously harvested a lot and had a lot of great adventures, a lot of experiences, but what's the one that, you know, sits on top of your pedestal?
Man, that's a tough one. This is a lot like, you know, let's say your sports careers. You know, I've had a lot of, you know, incredible moments on the mountains all around the world. You know, I would probably go so far as to talk about this Yukon Doll sheep that I killed. And I replay the shot in my head every now and then. And I don't replay a lot of shots in my head on animals that I've taken in my life. I just don't. But this is one that I actually replayed. The hunt was brutal. We're 2 weeks in. And so here we are riding out on the last day of the hunt and then some. And we see these sheep up on the hillside. There's a whole string of them, like 5 or 6 of them are legal rams. And then all of a sudden, you know, we see the big broomed ram. I'm going to get the shot at 600 yards. I shoot him. He goes up the canyon, and, you know, he's been hit. I can see, but I think I hit him maybe just like 6 or 8 inches behind the heart. So we have to climb this mountain, get up there, and then I shot him at like, you know, 750 yards as he walked behind a hill. I actually shot through the flowers and dropped the ram. I remember that shot. Like, I remember watching the flowers part.
It's like in
the
slow
ram falling.
motion.
Yeah, I could literally see it happen in slow motion. And people ask me all the time why I took that shot. And I was like, well, I knew the trajectory of the bullet was going to drop in on the other side of the hill. I just had to take a leap of faith and
let it
send
rip.
it. Yeah, but I remember watching little white flowers. There was a couple of yellow ones, but I remember the little white flowers and the bullet going through them and the flowers parting. And I remember watching the sheep fall on the other side of the hill.
It's amazing, like the amount of detail you can remember.
Yeah.
During those moments, right?
Yeah, during those moments. Hey, John, did you change something on your phone setting there, man?
No, I had to move it so I could plug it in wide. Does it look totally messed up?
I'm getting a bunch of like feedback, like not feedback, but I'm getting like echo noises everywhere since you touched something.
Hold on. Is that better?
Yep.
Yeah, that's way better. Whatever.
My charger.
Oh, your charger was creating the problem. Ah, got it. Okay, so your phone's, hopefully it doesn't die. We only got a couple minutes left.
We've got a little time.
Okay, cool. All right. So, John, let me tell you, or ask you, the kind of a similar question, for you, what was your, I guess, most memorable moment in NFL football? Like, no joke, like the one moment you replay in your head over and over and over again. And don't tell me it's when, Fletcher Cox knocked you on your ass and then, drug his crotch over your face or something.
I'm not going to go the humble route and talk about loss. Like, don't get me wrong; those are impactful. But I'm gonna stroke the ego here and tell a good story about winning. Don't get me wrong, Travis. I get where you're coming from because my losses definitely stick out in my head more than the wins. But
yeah.
for the sake of this, no. Look, it was my last win ever. It was beating the Saints in the NFC Championship game in 2018's the 2019 NFC Championship game for the 2018.
Oh, the one where you guys robbed them. That was a PI call game, wasn't it?
The whole state of Louisiana. Yeah, that one. But look, so I had been there as a member of that, Brett Favre-led Vikings team back in 2009. And I'm not going to get all emotional and sappy about this, but, that was a really hard-fought game. We felt like we outplayed them, but we turned the ball over too much. Saints ended up going on and winning the Super Bowl against the Colts that year. And we really felt that if we had, obviously if we had gotten into the big game, we'd have won it. But that was also the last game that my dad ever saw. So he died of a heart attack the following June. So then to go back there 10 years later as a member of the Rams, both, circumstances were amazingly similar. I think with the Vikings, we were 12-4. The Rams were 13-3. We're the 2 seed both times. We had the first round bye. Both years we caught Dallas in the divisional round, and that was actually the first time you and I ever met, Steve, which was great. I knew you were a Cowboys fan. You have a little bit of self-hate, so you like the Cowboys, and I invited you down just so you could see in person what I was going to do to their nose guard and what we were going to do to them as a team. Which I don't think I can talk about that on a podcast.
You can,
but yeah. So we just demolished them. For their biggest fan, Steve West of Steve's Outdoor Adventures, and same both years. So same 2009 team, same 2018 team, and then we go on. We play at New Orleans, who's the number 1 seed. In 2009, we lost on a field goal in overtime, and 2018, with the help of a questionable non-call, it wasn't a bad PI call. It was that they didn't call PI, is what everybody was crying about. But with the help of that, as if that was the only play that happened the entire game, right? And they couldn't have won it at some other point. But with the help of that, we end up beating the Saints on a 57-yard field goal in overtime. They got the ball first. Ndamukong Suh hit Drew Brees as he was releasing the ball. It was him or Aaron. I think it was Suh, though. Ball goes up in the air. John Johnson catches it. Offense goes out on the field, get a first down or two. And Greg Zuerlein kicks a 57-yard field goal to win that game. And that was my last win. It was the last time I'll ever win wearing a football jersey. It was also very cathartic in terms of, the moment wasn't lost on me what was at stake in terms of going back and getting some redemption for that game. I did think in the aftermath what my dad would have thought if he had been there for it, but most of the time I'll just remember, when I think back on that game, I remember 2 things. So first of all is running onto the field and hugging Andrew Whitworth, who was on the field goal team. I wasn't on the field goal team. I was off on the sideline when Zuerlein made the kick. And I'm hugging Whit, and we're, it's a very long extended man hug, but that's a long road to get to that point. 2 pretty long careers. He's still doing it, but 2 pretty long careers. First time either of us have been that far to go to the Super Bowl. And then I just remember being in the locker room after the game, and everybody's going up and getting pictures with the NFC Championship trophy. And I put the shirt on, I put the hat on, and I just kind of sat back in my locker and took the whole thing in. And, kind of like you have that moment ingrained in your head from your doll sheep on. I feel that way about that moment in the locker room. I just, I can close my eyes and put myself right back there. And it was just euphoria, when you work so hard to get something. I think it's why we reminisce fondly about hunts that are really difficult, right? And why we want to do physically demanding things is because when you've really struggled to earn something, it means so much more as opposed to when it's just given to you for nothing, and that's not like you can't enjoy an easy win. I loved easy wins over bad teams. Like, that's not to say I don't like I wouldn't enjoy a hunt where a 200-inch mule deer walks out in front of me on the first morning and I shoot him at 10 yards. I would take one of those. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, me
But,
too.
I'm still waiting for one of those.
Honestly, part of my answer to that one question about the hunt was, you asked me what's my favorite episode. My favorite hunt that I've done is the grizzly bear hunts, because they've been so brutal. I mean, my first grizzly bear hunt, I was snowed into a tent for 10 days. And like, that sounds crazy probably to a lot of people. It doesn't sound that crazy to others. I know you've had insane experiences up in Alaska, Steve. And if you haven't been there, Alaska is going to do what Alaska does, and you're along for the ride as a person. But I was snowed in that tent for 10 days. I finished my book on the first day. And as soon as I left the field, I was like, damn, I'm going back. I was like, because that sucked so bad, and I can't let Alaska beat me. And I had to do it again. I have to finish that. And I've been back since, didn't get a bear. It was a little bit more exciting the second time we saw some bears, but it's a struggle. That's a tough hunt, and that's why it's meaningful. Mm-hmm. Same thing with that memory. It was a victory under very difficult circumstances after, a ton of hard work.
Yeah, for sure. And, to look at that game, that you brought up with the Cowboys, that was actually impressive what you guys did. I even think when I got home, I left the Coliseum, went back to the hotel, flew home. I'd recorded the game so I could see what it was like on television. It's funny, you hooked us up with some pretty good seats. My wife and I were in the front row. She was watching the game. The cheerleaders were like 15 feet in front of me. Anyway, yeah, thank you. But it was that the commentator saying, hey, there's 2 players on the Rams O-line that are older than the head coach. And they're like, yeah, it's Whitworth and John Sullivan, and then they were talking about how you were dominating the nose tackle, and controlling the line of scrimmage, and that was actually, you guys did punish my boys that night, but it'll come back around for the Cowboys. It will.
Look, people always are like, I'll meet people when I played for the Vikings. I would meet people. They're like, "Oh, I'm a Packer fan. Sorry." I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. Look, if Mike up and the Packers offer me the most money, I'm going to be a Packer fan too. Like, don't get me wrong. I appreciate the football team. I appreciate the Rams. I'll be a Ram for life. But ultimately, when you're a player, you're a mercenary, right? Like, going to the highest bidder, or there's got to be some other circumstance that drives you to potentially stay with a team, but that the system there is not built necessarily for one player to stay in one place the entire time, right? And if it was, Tom Brady never would have left the Patriots, right? Who deserved to be with one organization for their entire time more than that guy, and that organization deserved to have him. So when that sort of a situation can come up, like it doesn't diminish at all what Tom did with New England for him to go do it in Tampa. And in fact, one of my favorite parts of that game, which I didn't love the game, the Super Bowl. I thought there were certain aspects of the game that I just didn't. I found it rather unenjoyable to watch. But I loved in the aftermath seeing the Patriots tweet at Tom to congratulate him. I thought that was just super classy and reflects well on Mr. Kraft and the organization that he has there.
Oh, without a doubt. All right, so we heard your football story. What's the hunting story you want to hear?
All right, so Travis covered
his biggest trophy kind of thing, yeah.
The highest trophy. I actually had one in my head, then I talked so much I lost it.
Yeah.
What is the most, in terms of from the animal, what is the most dangerous situation you've ever been in? Have you ever shot a bear on a charge? Have you ever been like, and I'm not talking about an aviation situation. It's got to be animal involved. What is the most danger you've faced on a hunt?
So we're eliminating the plane crashes and helicopter crashes. All right. So we're definitely going to grizzly charges. Yeah.
Especially as I'm going to Alaska in like a month.
Yeah. Good point. Well, the upside is you're definitely going to go hunt with and fly in with a hell of a bush pilot. So
the best in the world. And look, there are worse ways to go than doing something awesome. So
without a doubt. So all right, let's I'm gonna go with a grizzly charge. I was guiding, had a guy shoot a bear way too far back. Shot before I was ready for him to shoot. He thought he knew more than the guide. He thought he was a better shot than he really was. Pretty much thought he was a better hunter than he really was. I hope that he's not hunting with anybody anymore, because he was one of those nightmare clients that was going to put people in a bad situation no matter what. In fact, it wasn't even my client. I was guiding as a favor for somebody else, and he shot this very large bear way too far back while it was quartering toward us. It would have gotten a lot closer. Things would have turned out a lot better. Anyway, he hits this bear way back. Bear makes a spin and move. Before I can get a shot, it's into the ditch. It's coming right at us. It doesn't even really know where we are. It's just trying to get out of there. It's coming right at us. It covered that 200 yards between us in seconds. What started in slow motion ended in really high speed. And in the end, I didn't even realize that he was gone. The client actually dropped his rifle and ran.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was awesome, and I was using a borrowed .458 Winchester Magnum. That was even better. It was a gun I'd never even fired before.
Yeah.
That was dumb. But I remember crouching down. There was a tree limb in front of me, so I crouched down to a knee and I threw the rifle up thinking he was going to come up to my left, and when I saw his face come over the bank right in front of me, I was, I left a little skid in my shorts. I won't lie.
I guess so.
How far was he when you made the shot?
He died at just inside 10 feet. Yeah, he was 9 feet, 8 inches squared. Big bear. Yeah, that .458 hit him in the sternum and went all the way through to the other end.
One shot?
He tried to get up a second time. I let him have it one more time just for good measure, but the first one had him. Yeah. So the second one I shot, the bear was trying to get up, and I just stood up and shot him through the top of the head. And the client, when he got back, was mad at me for shooting it in the skull. So
should be appreciative of being alive.
Yeah, I was thinking the pistol whipping that I was thinking about giving him at that point in time, it was a good thing I've always had a lot of self-control when it comes to, situations where it's high intensity. And, but it took that guy a half hour to get back to me. I was actually sitting on the ground, leaned up against this dead bear, trying to get rid of the Parkinson's shakes that I had going on at that time, from the adrenaline, the post-hunt adrenaline, when it dawned on me just how close I came to getting trucked by this bear. So, that was probably the most dangerous situation. I've had 2 other bear charge encounters where we killed bears in a hail of bullets, but I had help on those. And when you have other shooters side by side, it's far less dangerous than if you're flying solo as the only guy plugging away on a bear. And I am glad that I had something big like a .458 on that one. I mean, anything .375 or larger, I feel confident would have got the job done. And I've always been that guy that felt like if I had the gun in my hands when things went south, no matter what the situation was, if I have a gun in my hands and a round in the chamber, I can control the outcome if I just,
control your
maintain myself, take aim and make the shot count. So that was definitely the closest I came to. Well, it's not the closest I've been to a bear, but it's the closest I came to getting smoked by a bear that was gunshot, pissed off, and ready to try and get in the woods. So, but I'll tell you what. Let's wrap this segment up real quick and take another break. We need to hear from another sponsor of the podcast. When we come back, we're going to talk about a project that John and I have been doing with a friend of ours named Steve Raymond. It's called the Far Wide Outdoors Project. It's a great story, and it's something everybody needs to hear about. We'll be right back.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Marathon Seat Covers. We've got you covered.
All right, we're back here at Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast with Travis Price and John Sullivan. We're kind of getting toward the end of the show here, and there's a special project that John and I have been working on with a great guy by the name of Steve Raymond. It's called Far Wide Outdoors, and Far Wide is something that didn't come about, I guess, by design. John and I were, starting this business, partnership, and he was coming on board with Steve's Outdoor Adventures, and he had a friend that was wanting to do a sheep hunt, and I'm looking at his email address, and I was like, what is Far Wide? And then John's talking to him about it, and it turns out it's this incredible app, and he just needed some help. And I feel like we were in the right place at the right time for each other. John, tell me what do you feel the future of Far Wide is?
I feel like Far Wide is there's a lot to Far Wide. Number one is it's very utilitarian, right? It's a mapping app. It has extreme functionality in terms of all the mapping apps that people are familiar with that are on the market. Onyx, Basemap. There's basically no major functionality that they have that we don't have within Far Wide. Number two is we aggregate data better than everybody else. So you can go on to Far Wide and search and circumvent a really long, drawn-out process trying to find information by going into our search bar. If you want to hunt elk in Colorado, you type in hunt elk Colorado, and every bit of information that can possibly come up by season dates, associated rules, harvest data, associated content that either we've put up or eventually users will generate and put up to those area cards are in that app. So there's a ton of information. Lastly, those are all hunting aspects. It's got map overlays in terms of access. We're getting an overlay to find a local FFL. It has shooting ranges, everything, campsites, everything you could possibly imagine to take advantage of the outdoors. So what it does is it streamlines the process. It's for hunters and fishermen and hikers. It's for the people that want to become those things and may not have a mentor or somebody to show them how to get there. You can download the Far Wide app for free, and you can cut weeks of research off the process for yourself, and it'll help facilitate getting you out into the field. Really what we want to do is we want to use this platform to encourage people to take part in the great outdoors. Whether that's private land or public land, we have resources for. But public land is an incredible resource that we all own. It doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to us as citizens of the United States of America. And people, if they want to, need to understand the rules and regulations around that, but should get out there and feel empowered to take advantage of it, because if you don't, generally it goes away. It's just like with hunting and the conservation of animals. If we want to conserve these the great outdoors in these open spaces, we have to, actively be, participating in them. The other thing Far Wide does, and I know I'm getting long-winded here, but I'm very passionate about the topic, is, we talked early on with Steve Raymond, which that it's been an amazing partnership. Steve Raymond's the real deal, real hunter outdoorsman. He's from Nebraska. We ended up meeting here in Greenwich. Our kids were actually in the same preschool class, and he played football at the University of Nebraska back in the old, Tommy Frazier days. Just a great guy, totally authentic, real deal founder, in this for all the right reasons. But we talked with him early on. It's like, look, I think Steve, you and I, we were noticing a lot of hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen getting censored on Instagram and Facebook. So we immediately said, look, let's not just be a mapping app. Let's add a social feed to this. Let's give people that share our values, men or women, anybody across the board, a place where they can go, they can connect with like-minded individuals, they can post photos, they can tell hunting stories, they can do all these things, and they can do it all in one place. So that's where the social component came from. There's digital media involved. We're working with e-commerce partners. Those will be launched soon. And, it's an all-in-one, digital outdoors experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've equated this to being in the Far Wide outdoor community. You've got, once again, this free app, not a pay app. It's not going to cost anybody anything. It's no risk to try it out. You download it. It's free. And it'll give you all of the features that, let's say, Onyx or Basemap will give you. The only thing we don't have right now is the 3D mapping. That's something we're talking about coming with real soon. But in terms of like land ownership information, who owns this land? Is it public land? Is it private land? Who is that landowner? Like you said, trailheads. You can quickly search and find out what it takes to buy a hunting license there. Buy a hunting license there online. Portals to the game and fish information. What's the success rate on bulls and cows, and just the quantity of information that you can get through the app is incredible. And then you throw in the whole social feed. Now it becomes a social media platform. You can share your waypoints. You can find a wallow somewhere where you're having success. Like I could find one and I could send that waypoint to you and Travis, and you guys would see exactly what I found and where I found it. Then you've got, like you said, the e-commerce opportunities. Something we haven't talked about enough is the digital media side. We've got complete television shows. We'll have our podcast available there. We'll have everything available there in terms of digital media. We're going to have more TV shows and everything. So, I mean, there's some really great stuff coming down the line with Far Wide, and it's going to be a complete outdoor community. And I look forward to talking with you and about that again in the future. So
absolutely, yeah. Look, it's exciting. I care about, obviously, everybody on this podcast and involved with Steve's Outdoor Adventures cares about, conservation and making sure that hunting and fishing and the traditions of the outdoors are passed on from generation to generation and they continue. And if we want to do that, we need to make sure that people are active participants. And I believe Far Wide helps facilitate that. And it encourages people and empowers people to get outdoors. And once you become an outdoors person or somebody that enjoys being out in nature, you never go back the other way, because it speaks to a part of your soul as a human being, and to the natural part in your DNA. And it just, you'll want to take advantage of it forever and be respectful of it.
Yeah,
so
it's the Far Wide movement.
Yeah.
The
Far Wide movement, the full
That's
send movement. Yeah,
Brad.
everything. Yeah, the Far Wide movement. And, if what we bring to the table or to the outdoor community through Far Wide is a greater participation by a growing community, then I would say that we did our part, and like I said, it's free. This doesn't even cost people anything to take advantage of it and use it. And so I'm really excited about the future of that. And hopefully, we're able to, be successful with that, because it's already successful. We just want it to become mega successful at this point. So,
yeah, I mean, can I tell one story kind of around that? I know that we're getting long on time here, but do you remember when Steve Raymond and I, because we've recently featured Steve on an episode where he and I hunted a CWMU property in Utah for mule deer, and we used the Far Wide app throughout that hunt. In the aftermath of that hunt, we got some of our digital assets back. I posted a photo on Facebook of the deer that I ended up harvesting on that hunt. I got called out by a friend who said, do you remember the comment? It disappeared shortly after, but asked, how can you be proud of killing an innocent deer? And this is not a bad person. She's, it's like I said, it's a friend of mine. I get where they're coming from. Doesn't fully comprehend it. I wrote them a response basically that said, look, the real threat to these animals is not well-regulated hunting. The threat to these animals is all along that CWMU property, along the edges are ski condos and overly developed, what should be elk and mule deer habitat. It's turning into ski condos. Yeah, for people that want to be in close proximity to Park City, but can't quite afford to live in Park City. So they're moving down towards Heber, which is where this CWMU is. And it's not anti-hunters that are the greatest risk to hunting, frankly. It's indifference. It's the people that just don't think about the outdoors, right? At least with an anti-hunter, we can agree on one thing, and that's that wildlife is important. And I'm not saying that I agree with the tactics that PETA and a lot of these people take, but at least they care. It's the ultimately to me, the biggest threat is people just ignoring it and not realizing that their actions are taking a massive toll. The people that buy those condos, it's not because they don't like animals, they don't care about the habitat, they're just not thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to do something that creates awareness and makes you take a pause and say, look, when I buy that half-acre ski condo that's sitting on the side of a mountain, I've just robbed, habitat, vital habitat, shrinking habitat from mule deer, elk, lion, all these different species and all the small game species, all of those species populations. So we just need to create awareness around how our actions affect the natural world. Because it's not necessarily that people are evil and are like, hey, I want to go destroy where the elk live. It's that they're just not even thinking about it.
Yeah, that's why we need to see more properties put into conservation easements,
right,
and start protecting that habitat in perpetuity.
And getting more people involved in the outdoors will help facilitate that, because there will be an awareness that's created, and I believe the Far Wide movement and, this Far Wide Outdoors project will help
continue to educate.
Yeah. Educate through participation.
Yeah.
Correct. It'll interest people. Correct.
Got it. Well, John, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here today.
Thanks so much for having me on. This is awesome. Look, we talk all the time. Anytime you want me on the podcast, I'm here. Just let me know.
Tell you what, when we get the table in here in a couple of weeks, we'll do a segment together. How's that?
That'd be great. I'd love that. And then soon after that, I'll be on my way up to Lake Clark.
Yes, you will. Yeah. You can see the table in real life.
Best of luck up there, John. Best of luck.
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, you take care.
Yeah, you too.
All right. And stop. There we go. Well, it's been a pleasure having John on the show. And Travis, I appreciate you joining me here in the podcast studio. This is, look, this is
especially be a part of the first one.
Oh, right. I mean, shoot.
It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, look, this has been something that we've been talking about doing for a long time, and I'm glad that we're finally bringing it to fruition, and this first show, it certainly didn't go without its hiccups. We had some technical, difficulties. Yeah, the communication. We're going to bring in some high-speed internets that are going to solve some of these problems. And the other thing, I made like 400 mental notes throughout the course of this, how to tell the stories and, what went smooth, what didn't go smoothly. And so now I'm really looking forward to the next podcast. And, I've got a couple of guests coming up that I think you're going to enjoy sharing the table with.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us here at Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. And I look forward to having each and every one of you tune in for the next podcast. And we've got something that's going to be coming up in future podcasts. I refer to the studio here as my dojo, right? It's kind of a joke. It's like, I'm going up to work in the dojo. As we clean, shrine. Yeah, it's my shrine. Yeah. But when we cleaned this space out and we started remodeling it and everything, I started like finding all of this stuff, all this incredible stuff that sponsors had sent me over the years that I never used because they would send me so much of it. And so I've made this detailed inventory of it. And what I'm going to do in every podcast moving forward, I'm going to give away
some,
we're going to give away some of this stuff because it's brand new. Some of it's really badass stuff, and I can hardly wait to do that. And we'll outline the details for that moving forward. But we're going to give away some pretty cool stuff. And
perfect.
Yeah, I can hardly wait to be back. All right, man. I'll see you at the next podcast.
Sounds good, Steve.
And we'll see you all then.